now, isn't it? 12 o'clock. I just want to go over a few things. First, I thought I'd start with a quote. What is responsible mining? Because that is really what we're talking about here today. And I have a quote here from actually Dave Tosin, who's with World Vision Canada. And I think it probably summarizes probably the best example on the internet of what responsible mining is. And I'm just going to read it through you, and then we can talk about it. So responsible mining means respecting the environment by meeting and exceeding national and international norms, seeking innovative and proactive approaches to environmental protection. It requires that a company upholds the rights and perspectives of people and communities affected by its operations and projects, arguably, and invest in long-term community development through national and local government and/or community development organizations. And furthermore, to be responsible means working collaboratively with local communities and investing in the long-term well-being of the country. The cost of taking shortcuts on any of these will reflect poorly on the company's reputation as a responsible corporate citizen and, in the long run, negatively impact profits as well. So I think that's a good summary of what responsible mining is. So let's talk a little bit about CSR. So as you know, the mining sector has been around for thousands of years, and arguably in the last 100 years, we've seen improvements to how, with technological improvements, impacts with or discussions with societies and communities on how to do mining better. And in the last 15 to 20 years, a lot of this has been couched into CSR, corporate social responsibility. And increasingly, investors want to see that. I think there's a stat somewhere that 30% of retail investors want to ensure that their investments are of an ethical manner. And you'll be hard-pressed to find any large institutional investor out there that doesn't have a CSR, environmental ethical component to their review process there. So this is the norm now of doing business. And if you're going to operate a company in your own home country, then the expectation is now that that same behavior of responsible behavior will be also transferred to any kind of frontier markets. So just because you're going to a less developed country doesn't give you the ability to undercut proper responsibility that you would have in your home country. And of course, now the expectation is that any companies that operate, mining companies or any form of extractive industry companies, Canadian companies or any Western companies, Japanese, what have you, that they need to respond to or respect international norms. And that includes the UN Guiding Principles. You have the OECD guidelines for multinational corporations. You have the UN Global Compact, and of course the voluntary principles on security and human rights, and a variety of other things. So these are the new standards that mining companies internationally must respect when they're operating in any place on the planet. Of course, all this comes down to environmental and social governance. So if you are going to invest in a project anywhere in the world, including Serbia, you need to look after the ESG components. So from an environmental standpoint, you'd be looking at the impacts to climate change of your investment, resource depletion, water, waste, and pollution, deforestation. Socially, you'll be looking at working conditions, including the Modern Slavery Act out of the UK, local communities, including indigenous communities, health and safety, employee relations, and diversity. And from a governance standpoint, you look at executive pay, bribery and corruption, which has got a lot of attention in the last couple of years in both the United States and in the UK, political lobbying and donations, board diversity and structure, and of course, your tax strategy. So let's talk about Canada. Canada has a very good ranking when it comes to CSR. It's up there. It's getting up there with Norway and Sweden. The government of Canada has invested in being a resource to Canadian companies operating abroad, and they've done that through creating toolkits. They have a CSR counselor, which is a position appointed by the government of Canada that provides oversight and support towards Canadian mining companies. It's a very unique position that's only found in Canada. And they're starting to interface with other governments now, providing regulatory support to countries around the world on how to implement CSR from a governance perspective to provide more teeth to responsible behavior, which is very positive. And of course, mining is a key component of Canadian foreign relations. I've heard various stats, but anywhere from 60 to 70% of mining companies in the world are headquartered in Canada. So really, our interaction with many countries around the world revolves around mining. And of course, it's very important that there's consistency between Government of Canada policy on CSR and the behavior of mining companies in implementing CSR best practices. So let's talk about Nevson Resources. We are a mid-tier zinc, copper company that has one operation in Eritrea. Our market cap's about 658 million US. We also have the Timok project here in Serbia, other exploration activities happening in the country here, as well as some projects that we're looking at in Macedonia. We've been in Eritrea for about 20 years, and that's been a very successful project for us. It's an open pit mine. We're able to work with the state of Eritrea on bringing this project under budget, on time, and it's the first heavy industrial operation in the country's history. Eritrea is one of the newest countries in the world. It succeeded from Ethiopia in 1993, and so this mine has played a considerable role in the development of the country, and I'll plan to talk about that as I provide some examples. And this same business approach to making a profitable investment while leading-edge CSR is going to be applied here in Serbia with the Timok project. We'll talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation. So there's Eritrea. I don't know if many people know where Eritrea is. Eritrea is Latin for Red Sea. It's it's one of the newest countries in the world, as mentioned. It broke away from Ethiopia in 1993. It was occupied by the Italians and the Ethiopians for over 100 years. And our mine is about 4 hours drive west of the capital city of Asmara. So early on, the Eritrean state wanted mining to be a significant component of their economy. So they adopted, CSR best practices back in, the mid-2005, 2006 period. But we found it very difficult for them to apply those conditions in the field based on their philosophical view of the international community. Eritrea has been isolated for many years. They didn't have their statehood recognized by the UN in 1957. They were occupied by the Ethiopians with very little international support for their sovereignty. And as a result, their mentality, their mindset has been towards isolation, and this has impacted our ability to implement, at least initially, on CSR best practices. And they also philosophically, because they're a socialist country, very similar to what Yugoslavia was thinking probably back in the 1950s, is that CSR is really an extension of the government. It doesn't belong as in their hands of a foreign corporation. And Eritrea, of course, wants to avoid international foreign aid and dependency of many of their neighboring African states. So CSR, in our context, historically, up until about 5 years ago, has been restricted to the gates of the mine. I'm not done yet. Sorry, I just need water. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our practices in country. So about 5 years ago, the Eritrean state started to see CSR as a tool internationally to counter many mistruths about the country and the mining sector, and as a mechanism to encourage responsible foreign investment. And they want responsible investment in that country there because of a variety of different issues in the country. So here's some of the examples in the last 5 years, which I think are remarkable for the state of Eritrea to employ. The first thing is that Eritrea has been politicized for its human rights record. And we were able to work with the Eritrean state on conducting 3 independent human rights studies in the country. There's only been about 40 done internationally, and 3 of them have been done out of little Eritrea, which is a remarkable feat, and that's about 7% of the total. They're the only country that I'm aware of in the world that's done 3 of them, back-to-back ones, fully transparent with the studies, and then going out, externally to stakeholders and talking about the study, and then coming back and providing feedback to the government, which has been remarkable. They've also been one of the only countries in Africa that's adopted the voluntary principles on security and human rights. Their entire security force at our mine site has been trained in this, numerous training sessions. Community infrastructure projects. We are the first foreign entity, including state and non-state actors, that have collaborated with the state of Eritrea on community projects. So we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on community projects in the country there, with first of its kind in isolated Eritrea. CSR reporting, we've been producing a report since 2011. It is the most transparent document in the country. In fact, the UN uses that report to calculate the country's GDP, which is a remarkable feat. So the Eritrean state is becoming more and more open to transparency, and that's, I think, quite a remarkable ideological shift considering their previous perception of secrecy. Low LTIs, on par with North American industrial standards records. This is the first modern mine in Eritrean in history. During the construction phase, guys were showing up in sandals. This is what they're used to, wearing sandals all the time. So we've moved people from sandals to proper footwear and PPE, and we have a very low LTI record as a result of that, and that is commendable, I think, to the Eritrean state. Training and development, again, first mine in the country, 92% of our workforce is Eritrean. 40% of our senior management team, Eritrean, and we want to continue to move that up. Again, a remarkable feat in a country that hasn't had much of a wage-based economy for many years. Most importantly, of course, is that CSR has meant more visitors to Eritrea. As an isolated country, they have not gone down this path, but under our CSR umbrella, we've been able to bring in journalists, diplomats, and a variety of other people that have come down and seen the reality of Eritrea. And of course, one other thing of interest here, a lot of this is premised on the fact that of corporate foreign policy. One of the things that we have done as a company from a CSR perspective is we were the only actor in the country internally that is able to speak to the UN Commission of Inquiry on Eritrea and provide a positive account of our experiences there. And that resulted in a modified report which has arguably helped the country's foreign policy. So imagine, and this is more of blue sky talk, but I think we've done a lot of this. Our CSR program in Eritrea has helped reduce migration flows. We provided thousands of jobs, many of them to skilled and semi-skilled Eritreans, which could arguably have left the country already. They have stayed in Eritrea, and in order, because our mine and the jobs have provided both intrinsic and extrinsic benefits to the local population. We've enhanced workers' rights in a mixed-based economy, so we've been active on the process of unionization. We have the first unionized mine in the country. There's 2 mines now, so we have one of them. And we've created a workers' rights policy, and we've done 3 independent human rights impact assessments. So we believe workers' rights under our CSR umbrella have been enhanced in Eritrea. We've created labor mobility within Eritrea and internationally. So the plan for Eritrea is they're going to have 4 or 5 mines in the next 5 or 6 years in the country. By providing training to Eritreans at our mine site there, experience, they'll be able to move around the country for other jobs versus outward migration. And the outward migration in Eritrea now is quite significant. Anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 people a month are leaving the country, a country of 3.5, 4 million. So it's having a significant impact on the future state of the country. And of course, with proper CSR practices, we offer a chance for skilled Eritrean diaspora to come home, and we're encouraging more responsible investment. As other people see us behaving responsibly in Eritrea, hopefully other companies as well will come to Eritrea and follow the CSR framework. So as you know, this is Serbia, moving on. We have the Timok project in Serbia here. And publicly traded mining companies in Serbia are relatively new, but CSR is not new in Serbia. It's been around since probably the turn of the century. Under socialism, it was a big part of the Yugoslav apparatus. And of course, in 2000, when there's market reforms in Yugoslavia, Serbia, CSR was also brought in by a lot of international firms that had CSR as part of their profile. And as our current experience is in Serbia, there seems to be, unlike Eritrea, no ideological or government restrictions on implementing CSR, which we think is positive for social license to operate in this country. So this is a project, so we're not at an operational standpoint like our mine in Eritrea. So we started last year doing CSR reporting. That's available both English and Serbian to let the public know, both in Belgrade, in and around Bor, of how we're performing on a variety of different fronts, whether it be environmental, social, job opportunities, what have you. We're really pushing forward on enhancing local job and contracting opportunities. 95% of our workforce is Serbian. We want to continue to elevate that to make sure Serbians are the benefactors of this resource development. Community investment, we've invested a couple $100,000 in projects for the last couple of years in and around Bor, whether it be supporting beekeepers, providing IT training for the population there, helping a variety of other projects as well. That's important for social license. Environmental cleanups, even though we haven't caused any environmental damage, there is a legacy of environmental issues in the Bor area there, and we want to play a positive role in part of that cleanup, to engage the local residents that we care about the environment and we want to make a positive difference to the community. Transparency is also very important to us here in Serbia, as well as in Eritrea. So we have an info center in downtown Bor, which provides an opportunity for the local population 5 days a week to come down there and talk about the project, to talk about job opportunities, to ask any questions or concerns they have, to talk about our land acquisition program, what have you. And we also deal with grievances as well, so trying to facilitate that as quickly as possible, that anyone that's been negatively impacted by our project has an opportunity or a venue to have that resolved in a quick manner. So let's go imagine. So for Serbia, we hope that our operation here eventually will create more well-paying jobs in Serbia. I think we're at 150 or 200 jobs now, but down the road we could be up as much as 600. We want to further complement through our CSR program the Serbian government's commitment to EU norms, the UN guiding principles, and evolving national laws in Serbia. We want to create additional labor mobility within and outside Serbia. We want to provide our business, we want to provide an opportunity for skilled Serbians that are living in other parts of Europe or Canada, the United States, to come home and work at the mine site as well. And we want to build further confidence in the Serbian public that social and environmental concerns are being monitored and addressed in the highest standard. Done. Thanks, guys.
So now we have Mr. Aleksandar Obrenović.